So first off, thank you so much for the organizers to allow, this is the first trip since COVID that I've been able to travel overseas. So I really feel honored that my first overseas trip is to present at this conference and then to meet some of my esteemed colleagues in regulatory at June University, as well as meeting some of the MFDS regulatory bodies here in Korea. So today's talk is I'm going to try to stay on time. I'll try to slow down. I get very enthusiastic and sometimes I speak. I know that not all of you speak English. I don't speak any Korean, so thank you for the translator. She's doing a great job back there. I've been able to understand everything that's been said so far. So I'm going to tell you, today I'm going to talk about managing science and regulatory science for combination products. And I'm not going to put a lot of effort in combination products per se, because other speakers are talking on that. But I'm going to talk about how do we develop the critical component in this is not the technology, it's not the medicine, it's the human capital that where we are really having huge challenges of training undergraduates to graduate, to physicians, to clinicians, to pharmacists that understand the challenges of the biological system, develop those novel molecules that are going to go in and join the device, the technology. We've already heard about how the new technologies are a wave of the future for Korea, and I agree 100% because look at all the fantastic technologies that have come out of Korea in the past. But now we have to combine the challenges of medicine, which I'll show are very, very challenging, with the device. For what goal? A lot of us are getting much older, a lot of gray hair here. We want to improve our quality of life, and we want to live longer. And so how do we do that? This is going to be up to the 21st century, to the younger generation, the next generation of scientists, clinicians, regulatory bodies, academicians, et cetera, working together. And so I'll be talking about that today and the challenges that we need. So today's talk, I've only showed, that's interesting. Well, it's advancing on my screen. It's not advancing anywhere else. So we might need our IT person right now because the screen is not advancing. Oh, now it's advancing even faster. Okay, there it goes. Thank you so much. Let's see if this will advance the slides too. No, technology. Okay, so I'm only going to talk on 4 of these very critical components, and I'll try to stay on time. And I apologize if I start to run over. Someone just yell at me, and I'll be sure to get done, because we've got plenty of time, I think, later to have really fruitful discussions. But I'm going to talk about a regulatory science program at USC as an example. We've been doing this for about 25 years, but we're still in the growth process. It's an ever-changing process that we all have to learn about. I'm going to be talking about challenges of creating a new drug, because as introduced, I not only work in academia, but I'm a practicing scientist. I've been running my own lab for about 25 years, working with natural products, both repurposed pharmaceutics as well as natural products, herbal products, et cetera. I'm going to talk about the regulatory considerations. What are the challenges? How are we going to be able to really move those regulatory considerations to make the molecule move forward, the device move forward, so it's safe, it's effective, and it's profitable. It has to be profitable. There has to be commercial value, or there's no way for it to be sustainable. We have to be realistic about that. And then the last part, and this is the biggest part, I don't care how good Korea is in technology, I don't care how good the United States is in technology, the rest of the world, the Europe, the EMA, et cetera, on technology, if we don't address the growing skills gap, if we don't take advantage of our human capital and start training now, the technologies are advancing so rapidly that we're not going to have the bodies that are necessary. The most critical component of all of this today's talk is how do we train the next generation of scientists to fill that skills gap. And I'm talking about millions and millions of jobs that are going unfilled in the next decade or so. Okay, there we go. So there's a bit of a delay. So this is just a screenshot taken from our webpage at USC, talking about our various master's programs in regulatory. Masters in Medical Product Quality, Masters in Management Drug Development, which is my program I developed about 20 years ago now. So I'm the director of that program, as well as the last program that talks about our new quality science. And I'm just showing this as an example of the many, many different opportunities that one needs to think about when you're developing a regulatory program. So it's not just didactic coursework. We also have a consultation center. We also train students. We collaborate with industry. We have some, in fact, we actually have a couple projects right now that have been in collaboration with small companies or mid-sized pharmaceutical companies in Korea. How does that come about? Is we reach out. Drugs need to be developed on a global enterprise, and so we're working with pharmaceutical companies right in Korea right now, where we do some of the regulatory work for them, the critical design components of the regulatory challenges at USC in partnership to help give them new ideas. And so I think it's a fantastic idea, and it's a good example of how your regulatory program at USC can move forward, or at NJU University can move forward. And again, I'm showing again just a screenshot of some of the summer programs we have at USC, as well as our Asian Pacific, the APEC core, where we actually have a regulatory center of excellence that we've been developing, and we're really quite proud to lead this as we move forward. So at USC, we kind of see the challenges. We're able to act on those challenges and not working on them only at USC, but in a global manner, because we recognize that we have to work to develop drugs. It's a global enterprise. And so we do bring students from East Asia, from the Asian countries, Korea, for example, that actually come and spend the summer at USC. These are undergraduates. These are graduate students. They'll come and spend several weeks, or some will spend a summer. Some will even do 6-month rotation at USC to try to get an understanding of the regulatory components of the United States and how does that interact with the regulatory bodies of EMA in Korea, et cetera. And I put up this slide because, as I said, I'm passionate about drug discovery. And this is the challenge we have. When we're talking about combination products and combination devices, the technologies for the device are developing quite rapidly because those technologies are used for many other industries, et cetera. So we're very good at the technology side. But when you try to combine that with the development of that novel drug, that new innovative product, that's where we have the real challenge. And I show this slide in all of my classes when I teach, and this is big pharma. So this is Roche. These are some of the big companies in the world, the Genentechs, the Pfizers, the J&Js, et cetera. Even the emerging pharmaceutical companies coming out of Korea all understand this. You start with a library of thousands and thousands of compounds, and if you're lucky, one of those compounds will make it all the way through the regulatory hurdles to be shown to be safe and effective for that particular disease state. And the challenges are not only that the lack of success, we normally have the lack of success on these, I mean, the success of these drug molecules is maybe 1 out of 100, 1% out of 100%, et cetera, from early discovery to going out to a new drug. But look what that results in, the cost per drug. And this is in US dollars, approximately $1.8 billion per successful drug that has made it to launch out into the market. This is very, very challenging. How do you come together? How do small biotechs, how do small startups come, how do they can work in partnership? How can us in academia, how do we work with the regulatory bodies and with industry to try to find a way to discover and develop those drugs? This continual rising of cost is unsustainable. Pretty soon it'll be $2.5 billion per drug. I mean, how are you going to ever have a return on investment? How is society going to be able to pay for those drugs if we don't find a better way to do that? And so I'm going to try to present some ideas today that I hope that you'll take into appreciation. Oops, very tense. So I'm showing here, this is a very simple slide, a very obvious combination product of understanding insulin, combining insulin for a patient suffering from type 1 diabetes, which is continually takes thousands and thousands of lives per year. Combining insulin, combining a pump. Pumps have been around for over 20 years now, right? but there's always been challenges with the efficiency of the pump, but now combining that with technology where you've got a sensor. So you've got technology feeding the pump. It's communicating to the patient, to the user on their smartphone. It's also can be, as you can see by these graphs, it's communicating to the physician. It's communicating to whoever's collecting that body of information to see how well that insulin is working with that patient. How well are they maintaining their flux, their sugar content throughout the day? Why do we care? Well, because if we can maintain that as close to possible as a healthy individual, then you can have increased quality of life. And so this is just a simple demonstration of combining insulin, which, as you know, insulin is always in the news because it's way, way overpriced for what it is. And that's a challenge that we have to deal with. We've combined that with, we've eliminated the syringe and we've gone to the pump, which is much more effective. It doesn't replace the pancreas, but it tries to mimic the pancreas as far as when it's releasing insulin. But now we've combined that with that glucose sensor that's sending signals to the pump, trying to communicate with that pump. And it's also sending that data to the smartphone, and that technology can also go to the physician's office so that the physician can be tracking that patient's progress also. Or in US, like for example at USC, a lot of our diabetes clinics are run by our pharmacists. Our PharmDs are actually the ones running the diabetes clinics. Why? Because they understand the drugs and they understand the patient-drug doses and interactions even better than the physicians. But it's a way for us to advance and appreciate how the device and the combinations can come together. And so new combination products will need coordination across multiple organizations. I think that was obvious. You've got technology, you've got smartphones, you've got the drug, you've got the insulin, you've got the pump, that's a mechanical, that's a bioengineering, et cetera. All of those have to come together in an efficient way. And so you can see when you're looking across this linear phase from research, pre-discovery, all the way to phase 4, post-marketing, all of the different challenges and where the different participants, academia can come involved with basic research. Doing translational medicine, you can have partnerships with biotechs doing innovation work. But you also have to include the regulatory bodies from very early on so that the products are moving forward, make sense. And so it's a combination of academia, industry, and the regulatory bodies. If you can put those together, you're going to have a success. And so what I'm giving in this example is that cross-functional interdisciplinary teams that are necessary. And I'm not expecting you to try to read all of the small words, and this is not all of the players out there. But it gives you an example of how it can't just be a very bright scientist or a very bright physician or a very bright person in technology. Elon Musk can't take over the technology field and come up with some type of a novel technological breakthrough. This isn't a Tesla, right? And so you start to get the sense of the very, very challenging and critical nature and what is driving all of this, what drives the technology, what drives the science, what drives the discoveries. The common theme is the individual. We need very bright, trained, innovative, high-energy individuals that want to get involved in this field. And we're competing. We're competing for those same young, bright individuals that want to go into other fields of IT, for example, that are maybe more successful because it's much easier to develop an IT, for example, doing IT technology for the next generation smartphone because we understand how smartphones work. The biological system, we think we understand how the biological system works, but when we try to develop those novel drugs, what do we find out? We find out that failure after failure after failure. The drug's either not safe or it's not efficacious for the intended purpose. And so unlike developing the next generation smartphone, the challenges are immense in this field. And so how do we stimulate the young, bright minds that want to go into this field? So I'm going to give some examples. Linked to that is the regulatory considerations, because this is a global strategy, right? This is not Korea trying to be a leader by itself. They recognize Korea wants to be a leader, but they want to sell their combination products to the world. You can't afford to only develop to sell in Korea any more than the United States can afford to develop devices only to sell in the United States. This is a global economy. We all get sick. It's a global, the regulatory bodies across the world have what we call through the International Conference on Harmonization. We have agreements with the regulatory bodies throughout the world so that we can work in harmony to advance human health in the most cost-effective and most successful method as possible. And so I'm trying to illustrate the importance of this one player right here, regulatory strategy. Regulatory science is a field that many individuals have never heard of. And yet if you don't have the regulatory bodies on board, and if you're not developing safe and effective molecules, nor do you know how to develop a safe and effective molecule, it will never become a successful business. And so we have to enhance and we have to communicate the role of the regulatory bodies in academia that are helping to develop those next generation scientists. And so this is really getting to the crux of my talk right now, is the growing talent/skills gap. This is our biggest challenge. We can come up with the technologies, we can put in billions of dollars to make new machines, to do high throughput screening, to do all sorts of electron microscopy, all sorts of cool technologies. But if we don't have the human capital, we're never going to be able to crack that nut for the next generation of drugs. It will continue to be costly and very challenging, and we'll continue to have, how many diseases can you think of offhand that we have very few or no therapies? Think about, I'm prejudiced because I work on the CNS. So I work on neurodegenerative diseases. Think about Alzheimer's. Think about Parkinson's. Think about Huntington's. Think about schizophrenia. Think about bipolar, depression, anxiety. We have very few drugs that can somewhat help the patients cope for anxiety and depression. We have no drugs that can slow down the progression of Alzheimer's. We have no drugs that can slow down the progression of Parkinson's. We understand when you look at Huntington's disease, a very, very life-debilitating disease, we know the exact gene that is malfunctioning. We have identified that one single gene for that disease, and yet we still have not been able to come up with a therapy to treat those patients that are diagnosed with Huntington's. They know that the end is going to be ugly and painful for that family, okay? We have a long, long ways to go. And so what I'm trying to illustrate in this slide, and this is a bit old, I apologize, because this was one of our doctoral students had done a survey of this back in about 2014, 2015, but this trend has not gone away, it's gotten worse. Between 2015 and 2025, US manufacturers, this is the US alone, will need to hire about 3.4 million workers. The shortages in this field are unbelievable. That translates to significant high-paying careers in both Korea and in the United States if we can train the workforce, but we have to train that workforce. 60% of those positions, or 2 million jobs, will likely go unfilled. 84% of executives surveyed in the study, these are big companies, agree there is a talent shortage. That's where academia, the regulatory bodies, the universities can come together in the recruitment of undergraduates to get them stimulated to be thinking about the long-term career opportunities that can help all of us advance human health. Because at the end of the day, we all want to advance human health. Yes, we have to find ways to pay for it. We want to make a profit for the companies that invest in this, for the universities that invest in these endeavors. It has to be sustainable, but at the end of the day, the goal is to advance human health so that we live prosperous lives, we live longer, and we enjoy living. So what I'm trying to show here is that talent gap, and this is really the programs I've developed at USC. So I'm actually the Associate Dean of Undergraduate Education, not of Affairs. They keep changing the title. There's just me at the undergraduate level. But about 6 years ago, about 10 years ago, I've been on this rampage for some time about the talent gap. I've been training master's students for about 20 years now, 15 years very aggressively. And I came to the realization about 10 years ago, we've got to do this better. How do we do it better? Why do I try to attract graduate students into my master's program that come in with a strong chemistry background or biochemistry background, but they've never thought about the pharmaceutical industry. They've never thought about how do you develop a drug, et cetera. And so about 10 years ago, I laid out a plan. And about 7 years ago, I launched my first 5 or 6 courses at USC in a new major that I developed called Pharmacology and Drug Development. And in that first year, I had a total of 35 students across 4 classes. I had offered 4 classes. I had 35 undergraduate students. This fall, we have, I think, 12 classes on the books that we're teaching right now, and I have a total of 455 students in those classes. So in 5 years, I've gone from 35, 6 years I've gone from 35 students to 455 students, and this next year it looks like it's gonna be doubling probably again. Why? Because we recognize that we have to start at the undergraduate level. We have to start training students, not just to be experts in chemistry or biology, but to start to talk to them about how that chemistry adapts to pharmacology in the clinical experience. And so we've started to plant those seeds at USC, and I know that they have a strong pharmaceutical program here at Honshu University, as well as combining that with their regulatory program. But we have to be able to train from undergraduates to masters to doctoral students to physicians to clinicians. Why? To train to allow for a career advancement and mobility. This generation of, your next generation of scientists that are going to make those discoveries, they want to have flexibility in their lives. They want to have mobility. This is the 21st century. It's a different paradigm that we're working in. And that paradigm has to come together to meet the needs of a changing environment. How do we do that? I'm showing in this square, law, regulation, science, business, all of those aspects coming together in a unified fashion to advance human health. And the pharmaceutical industry there's almost an endless number of career choices. I tell the students that come in, that I mentor from, that come in for career advice, et cetera, I challenge you, if you're at all interested in healthcare, at any facet of healthcare, I would challenge you to identify, to say that I can't find a career that I find interesting. And so what I've shown on these slides, and we're making these available for you so you don't have to worry about the small words, et cetera, but I'm giving, what I'm trying to give here are really I've got a pointer here actually, showing the so many different opportunities, from startups to patent law, to venture capital, to the biopharmaceutical research companies. I mean, I was talking a bit about one of the individuals at the meeting today where they're trying to bring together and build a pharmaceutical park in collaboration with Honshu University. So you get the sense of all the many opportunities, and you look at to get a drug approved, all of the different areas that individuals can participate. Those are all high-paying careers. But for them to be high-paying careers, it means you have to have young, bright students in these programs, and you have to start training at the undergraduate level and then go to the graduate level. This is where our partnerships with your experts, for example, in regulatory science at Honshu University, working with the regulatory bodies of Korea, working with the small biotechs, working with the pharmaceutical industry of Korea, but also working with partnerships throughout the world. Coming to USC, we've already started our partnership between Honshu University and USC, because this is a global experience. Our students want to have the ability to come and visit Korea. Your students in Korea want to have the ability to come to USC, to work in various environments, to get a sense of the opportunities that are available. And what I'm showing finally in this last square is this blurring, and what I call this blurring boundaries, is this Abilify, which where it's combining this molecule that used to be just taken as a pill, where then it went to a patch, and then all of a sudden we started to find ways that it could communicate to the app, to the smartphone, but also communicate with the physician and the psychologist that can work with that patient that's suffering from depression, that's suffering from the challenges of anxiety, and they're on these medications, and now they don't have to wait till they can try to see a physician. We can have individuals that can be monitoring the patient to ensure that patient doesn't become suicidal, for example. Oops, apologize. Something went wrong there. Well, it didn't show on the screen, so that's okay. So really, I'm wrapping it up right now. What I'm trying to show here is that really we're in a global industry. This is not something that I can do by myself. This is not something that USC can do by itself. And this is something that I can't read in Korean, but I'll try to get that to go away. And it won't, so there we go. We have to combine a global workforce to develop, manufacture, market therapeutic products of tomorrow. This is an opportunity for Korea. You've got some of the best and brightest in this country. There's no doubt about this. You've seen over the last 20, 30 years, how rapidly the various technological industries have grown in Korea. But now we're facing new challenges. You're trying to get into the world of medical development. And the challenges are no different for those in Korea than they are in the United States. The biological systems are a challenging nut to crack. And we can only be successful if we can collaborate together, if we can get away from individuals trying to show how smart they are on their own, but rather work in a collaborative manner for the success and advancement of human health. And to conclude, I'd just like to show, there we go. Remember, anytime you're working in the pharmaceutical industry, you want to come up with a device combination. In fact, I was talking to one of the individuals from FDA on devices today. The devices are more predictable, but when you're combining that with the drug, you have to think, if it's a 10 or 12-year process to develop that drug, at the starting point, where do you want to go and how do you want to get there? And my last bit didn't show up there, so my little punchline, I apologize. There we go. So begin with the end in mind. This is a collaborative effort. It's one that I know the various regulatory bodies, universities, and pharmaceutical companies in Korea can be successful if they put their mind to it. But remember that talent gap. You have to start educating in the colleges. The universities need to be bringing up the individuals and showing the career paths in this field versus losing that talent, that scarce resource. Let's face it, it's a scarce resource for us to all advance human health. And with that, I thank you, and I thank the organization for inviting me today.
열정